Good day. Welcome to Dutchess Talk Radio. I'm John Marino, and we are produced by Sharc Creative, made possible by Tompkins Mahopac Bank, by Robeson Oil, the house that service built, by Lipolis Electric. Don't be left in the dark. Get Lipolis. By Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard up and down the Hudson Valley. By Michael Labriola, landscape design and construction of Armonk, and by White Plains Hospital. We are joined by the county executive here in Dutchess, Marc Molinaro. County Executive Molinaro, welcome back to Dutchess Talk Radio. Happy New Year. And how is Omicron doing now?
Oh, well, Happy New Year to you too. Welcome. I'm glad to be back. Thank you. Listen, we saw a seismic peak in cases earlier on this year. There's no question. The good news about Omicron has been that it is a less severe variant. We know that. We know it simply by the data. More people were contracting and ultimately positive with the virus, but the increases in hospitalizations and severity didn't trend at the same rate, which is good news. Although there are still those who have been hospitalized, and sadly, we've seen far too many lose their lives. Most individuals dealing with multiple comorbidities. But again, we know there are mitigation steps that work. We ask you to take them and keep yourself safe. But we've seen a substantial reduction in cases over the last 2 weeks. Nearly every day of the last 14 days has been a decline in cases. We've had one or two minor upticks, but we've gone from about 8,500 active positive cases to now 1,600, and I suspect at this rate we'll be under 1,000 in short order. Which is, it's good news, right? People are not being as impacted by the virus, and hopefully this is in its last legs of being a pandemic, and likely we transition to something more akin to an endemic. And as I've said, we'll be at a point, and perhaps we should have been there already. I think we should have been there already, but we'll be at a point of just giving people information and letting you make decisions on your own.
For example, the mask mandate issued by the governor in December, you were among the first to step up and say, I'm not going to do this. I want people to be as safe as possible, but I can't stick somebody in front of a door everywhere and make sure they have a mask on.
Well, there were really 3 points to our objection. I mean, the first is the question of necessity. And to this date, no one can argue with us that listen, the cases grew indistinguishably from county to county, state to state, regardless of these kinds of sort of broad-based one-size-fits-all mandate. They just didn't produce an outcome that would result in 2 years of an emergency order. And so from perspective one, an emergency order is not something that has no defined beginning or end and doesn't have any measurement tool to tell you how it is we're going to determine whether or not we've achieved the goal. Number two, to the point of resources, this particular mandate was issued by the New York State Health Department, which means, the sanitarians that work at local health departments be required to enforce. There are not that many of them, and frankly, they had other responsibilities to do. And thousands of them, from vaccinations, to case management, to testing, to the other business of the health departments. The third also is really the impractical nature of the order itself. If you were to walk into a local public library without your mask on, get your book, and walk out, you don't get the fine. The library does. It makes little sense to have us issuing $1,000 fines 2 weeks after an incident to the institution if the institution was even trying to enforce the mandate. And so none of it was practical, none of it was appropriate, and we believe ultimately not necessary. And so we said so. The other is I say to people, because there are a number of folks who said, well, you should have just kept your mouth shut. Well, first, that's not necessarily, that's not something I do. But secondly, it's not necessarily the role of government simply to kind of ignore what can or cannot be done. But our departments get flooded with calls from people who say, I saw somebody without a mask, or this business needs to have you visit. And all of a sudden, we're fielding all of these questions and trying to explain to people, we can't do what you want us to do. we're not issuing the fine to the man who walks into the Stewart shop. It's Stewart's, even if Stewart's was the one trying to enforce the mandate. We're not able to do this in real time. We have to come well after the fact. So the impractical nature of that, we wanted to be clear with residents up front. This is just not something we can do.
Mm-hmm. I came across a story that said the Dutchess County Democratic Party posted on their Facebook page that after you objected to the mandate, they claimed that you came down with COVID, and that was not the case, and they had to retract that and take that down.
They did, although, I haven't received an apology, not that I'm looking for one. That's exactly what they did. But there's two important things here. Number one, when somebody contracts any illness, the right response from any of us is we wish you a full and speedy recovery, period, end of sentence. The second is it is not a crime, and we should not be demeaning individuals who contract COVID, whether they're earnest in following mitigation steps or they've chosen not to. We don't want people to get sick, and wishing or applauding when people get ill, or sadly if they're hospitalized or dying, is entirely inappropriate. And I think they were jumping to make a political point, which ultimately was untrue. When and if I contract COVID, I will follow all the appropriate mitigation steps. And just as I have done many times over, I would expect that folks would wish me a speedy and full recovery.
My first thought was they are worried that you might run for governor again.
Well,
seriously, that was my first thought. Yeah,
that could be. Yeah, I mean, listen, it was a political point that was unnecessary. It's unnecessary and ugly. And thankfully, at least it was taken down.
Dutchess County Executive Marc Molinaro here on Dutchess Talk Radio, the Cup of Joe political show. I'm John Marino. Let's move over to the state budget. Let's go up a few miles to Albany. If you were a state legislator representing Dutchess County, what would you be looking for to bring home the bacon?
Well, I'd offer three things. Number one, I don't think this budget does anything to restrain spending. And because we used to joke, the only thing more dangerous in Albany than the state having too little money is the state having too much money. The state has too much money, and there isn't a concerted or an effective effort to drive down cost, especially during a time where inflation and cost of living is dramatically higher and growing. So number one, containing spending and reducing taxes and the burden on businesses, farms, and families. The second, from my perspective, is are we holding government accountable? We are not. And so from everything we see, the budget itself really needs to be picked apart, and there needs to be a clear understanding where every dollar is being dedicated. There's a lot of slush fund money in there and discretionary spending, not appropriate. The last, though, and I've said this, we are in a violence crisis. There is a state of emergency that is being felt in just about every community across the state of New York, and that is this growth in crime. In particular, gun violence, but crime of all kinds. It is a result of a lot of things, yes, but it is a direct result from the cashless bail discovery reforms that the Democrats in Albany imposed on the state. This is the only state in the country that does not allow a judge to have some discretion when it relates to risk of violence or risk of flight with an offender. And they stripped that away with cashless bail. And what's happened is they've empowered criminals, they've diminished public safety, they've undermined law enforcement, and they're re-victimizing victims. That must be priority one. The governor has the ability to move on that, to either include it in budgetary conversation or to move on it more aggressively. There is no desire to do so, and it is damaging and creating a real crisis. We've had half a dozen officers in the city of New York shot just this month alone, and we are seeing an increase of crime of all kinds in all parts of the state.
Mm-hmm. How can executives like you, like Steve Newhouse in Orange, like new New York City Mayor Eric Adams, progress in knocking crime down as best as possible, bringing the numbers down, making people feel safe as best as possible, if Carl Hastie, if Andrea Stewart-Cousins, if Kathy Hochul don't get together and say this has to stop? We do need to change the laws that we changed just 2 years ago.
Yeah, so we'll do what we continue to do in Dutchess, which is to invest in law enforcement, provide support to police agencies all across the county, give them the tools, the resources, the training necessary, invest in community policing so officers can engage in the community more effectively. We'll continue our work in mental health and substance use disorder to try to get to the heart of the root cause of some violence, and we'll continue to lobby Albany. But again, absent those changes in state law, this is going to be a spiraling effect. And your point of even bringing him up, I mean, Mayor Eric Adams, a Democrat, has made this point. Yes, he's made other arguments for driving down violence, but he has said you've got to confront cashless bail. The court administration here in the state of New York told the legislature that judges need a little more discretion. And I just would tell you that what we saw in Dutchess, for 8 years prior to cashless bail, we cut violent crime by 50% in Dutchess County. And we did that by investing in intervention, prevention, and diversion programs. All are undermined by cashless bail because an individual ordinarily committing a lower level offense may have appeared before a judge. At that moment in time, we could assess for risk. We could assess for mental health disorder. We could bring them together with resources. Now we don't see that individual until they've committed their seventh or eighth or more violent crime. And then it's so late that we may not be able to save them. And sadly, we've lost too many others. And there isn't a serious enough conversation about how the victims are being re-victimized by cashless bail. And that's a travesty in and of itself.
How about infrastructure around Dutchess? Always a big question around the tri-state area, roads, bridges, and everything else involved with infrastructure. It's a lot more than that. How is infrastructure set up now in 2022? How much must that be attacked and fixed and worked on with the money gotten from the state?
Yeah, so we'd like more focus from the state. I talked about this when I ran for governor. It's not just the sort of the routine amount of maintenance. There needs to be an investment from the state and federal government in real infrastructure development. I'm concerned that the federal dollars and state dollars aren't really being watched in any way. The last time we had a massive federal spending on infrastructure was when Barack Obama was president, and most of that money never found its way to the streets. And the dollars that did have taken a decade to be spent. So there isn't the oversight, there isn't the efficiency in the delivery of those dollars that needs to be. I know that's something that I'll be fighting for. When it comes to what Albany could do, I would argue there is some benefit in this particular. The governor's proposed some increases in aid for infrastructure. That's useful and helpful. We at the local level have to use those dollars effectively. Dutchess has always rated very high on county highways and bridges. State roads in the county are still a little bit diminished, and we'd like to see more dollars get to local streets and highways. But we're doing our level best to make the smart investments. We're hopeful, and certainly something I'm going to fight for is real direct oversight and efficiency in the delivery of federal and state aid and infrastructure. Otherwise, it's just printing good money after bad.
Mm-hmm. Open space preservation, part of the overall infrastructure of Dutchess County. Now, we've seen the real estate market go up and down in New York State. How is the real estate market doing in Dutchess right now? How does development fit in with just retaining that overall traditional, historical, open space look and feel about Dutchess?
Yeah, so we led the state in open space and farmland protection with our open space protection plan. This year, we're preserving another 500 acres. We'll have, have preserved somewhere in the neighborhood of 8,000 acres over the course of our effort, which is good. We're strengthening agriculture and farming. That's moving in the right direction again, growing again, and preserving some of the more rural and agricultural aspects of Dutchess. Most of the development projects that were on hold prior to the pandemic are roaring forward, and there's a great demand for both residential and commercial square footage in and around our city and village centers. So that's moving forward. You kind of referenced it. The pressure, outward pressure from New York City has definitely increased and enhanced the real estate market significantly. We are seeing a bit of a leveling off in the region, which is good. If you're selling, the market is great. If you're buying, you're going to have more challenges, and that really is an issue that's going to have to be confronted, and that's making sure that there's housing that is affordable to every level of income. And so, yes, I mean, listen, if you can buy $1 million house, we want you to be able to do that. But what we're also seeing is that people who can afford more expensive homes buying down, and when they buy down, they shrink the housing stock. There's fewer and fewer the more affordable mid-level homes that are available for those who want to buy up, right? So we have to confront that. And so our goal is going to continue to be to support traditional affordable housing, the subsidized work that we do, but also it's to work with municipalities to create what I would refer to as a housing ladder, all types of housing stocks, so that people at the lower end can move up, people at the higher end can move up or down, and it doesn't create this pinch, which we have now. And the Hudson Valley is feeling it significantly. We're hoping that some of the pressures is going to be released soon, but we need more housing opportunities at all income levels, from lower to higher, and everything in between.
Any thoughts about running for governor, especially now again here in 2022, where there is some upheaval?
No, I'm a candidate for Congress. That's it. I am running for Congress. Yes.
All right. Okay.
Yes, but I'm not running statewide again.
No, never statewide again. That's going to be it for you.
Never say never.
Okay. Yeah. In politics, never say never, right?
That's up to the voters. I listen, I've been blessed. It's up to the voters. Where they want us, we should go.
And by the way, what's a New Yorkian?
There's no
trying to
such thing.
Figure that out.
This is a candidate in the north part of the state tweeted something about he's going to be fighting for New Yorkians everywhere. That is a prime example of hiring somebody from outside of your state who knows little about your state, writing a tweet that they thought would be funny.
Clever.
It is funny.
It is funny in a different way, no doubt about that.
Yes, their New Yorkians are, I think, from a different planet.
I think that's us, right? New Yorkians. There we go. Who knew that's what we were? Right now we know. Right. Marc Molinaro, County Executive here in Dutchess on Dutchess Talk Radio. We thank you as always. Hope we get to talk again soon. All the best.
And to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Marc Molinaro here in Dutchess Talk Radio, produced by Sharc Creative and made possible by Tompkins Mahopac Bank, by Robeson Oil, the house that Service built, also by Lipolis Electric. Don't be left in the dark. Get Lipolis by Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard up and down the Hudson Valley. Also by Michael Lambriola, landscape design and construction of Armonk. They work throughout the Hudson Valley too. And also by White Plains Hospital. Catch all of our Dutchess, Orange, Fairfield, Westchester, Rockland, and Putnam County Radio, talk radio programming on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube.